right, welcome to another Boys to Dads podcast. I'm your host, Big Country.
And I'm Coach B. What's poppin'?
So this is going to be a very fun episode. I'm excited about it, right? We're trying to do our top 5 comedy specials. Very hard to nail down. So we'll go with comedians and comedy specials and just talk about our favorites.
All right.
We're heading to the end of season 1, so we're trying to do something fun, exciting, and, just get it popping.
Mm-hmm.
As always, like, listen, and follow. We're going to be putting some stuff on YouTube. We're going to be putting stuff on TikTok. It's always going to be at Boys to Dads Podcast. All right, we're on Instagram and Facebook. Hit us up. Leave us messages. Interact with us. Mm-hmm. We're going to do a top 5. We're going to do a hip-hop 50th anniversary episode. I'm excited about that because I love hip-hop. So, we'll try to give you some content, some fun content, some dad content as we move into season 2. It's kind of weird to think that we've been doing this for a year. Still got a lot to learn. We hope you enjoy it. As always, boys to dads, barbershop meets the therapy chair.
Yes, sir.
Right? So we're about to do a barbershop episode. But comedy is therapy.
Exactly.
So, before we do anything, check in. How's everything going?
Everything's going, can't complain. Summer's going fine so far. No complaints. It's just a lay back, kick back a little bit. Still working from home. Anything like that. I go back and forth between home and the office a lot. But right now, just gearing up for the upcoming school year right now. So this is like my nice little break in between.
Well, it's nice that you had a break. Because, today especially is my official first day of the summer, right? Because we ended the program. Yeah. The little summer, camp program for 3 weeks. Really fun. I got to teach basketball. Got to interact with kids that are coming in as 6th graders to, middle school. Got to see the 7th graders that are turning 8th graders, which I'm going to have this year. So that was fun and exciting. And I'm being sarcastic when I say that. But now, now we get to concentrate on relaxing, trying to recharge the battery. Try to get my son a job now that he's graduated high school, get him into college. All the fun stuff that parenting just never stops, man.
Exactly.
Just when you think you're done, nah, you're not done.
It's just another chapter, another level.
All right, so due to copyright issues, right, I wanted to play a couple, little tidbits, but I read up on some laws, and we're not doing that today. So we're just going to talk about comedians. We're going to talk about, the specials. Maybe when's the first? So I'll lead with this. When's the first time that you remember? Like, what was the first comedian you saw special?
That's on the top of my list right now, and that's because he was the first time I ever saw one, or even heard one. Richard Pryor, live on Sunset Strip.
Yeah, that was classic.
That was my very first one.
Is that the mechanic from Tupelo, Mississippi?
Yes, sir.
With the cigarette hanging out his mouth? Hilarious.
Yes, that's when I became a Richard Pryor fan.
Yeah, Richard Pryor. If you don't like him, you don't like comedy.
Put it this way, if it wasn't for Richard Pryor, a lot of comedians you probably like today wouldn't have jobs.
I was just having a conversation with somebody today about, I said people always talk about Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor, but if you want to see the first comedian to really just cuss, it was Red Fox,
Red
man.
Fox, yes.
Red Fox, like people remember Red Fox. Most people that don't know comedy, they probably think of Red Fox from Sanford and Sons. Now, throw on a little record of Red Fox back in the day, man. Ooh. You would learn some new language.
What? What? Yeah.
So my first comedy special got me in trouble. Okay, I must have been 8 years old, and this is when you had to get up and turn, like hit the little buttons on the cable box. And I remember it had like the little thing
switches to go from level 1, 2, and 3.
Yep.
Yes.
So this is the old school level 1 and 2. There was no 3 yet, right? Okay. So HBO used to do like you'd get like a free weekend, right? Twice a year they give you a free weekend.
Yep.
It's 10 o'clock. I couldn't sleep. Parents were in bed. Go downstairs. Eddie Murphy Raw's on.
Oh, that's my number 2, by the way. But
okay, Eddie Murphy Raw for me is number 1. The I Rock Z. Rocky comes out. He's talking about the Italians. Ice cream.
Ice cream.
Yeah, you ain't got no ice. But my favorite was because this was around the time where the Cosby Show had come out, right? So I'm talking like I'm 8, so it's like 1986, right? So Cosby Show I think just came out. Right, so or it's coming out, but Cosby because of what do you call it, Fat Albert, and then he would always do like the reading and the right, and his comedy special. So he was, and I remember his like, my son Innes, and Eddie Murphy. At that moment, I thought he was the funniest person I've ever seen live.
To be honest with you, during that time, he probably was.
Don't understand the suit that he wore. It had to be hot as hell in that leather suit.
Style.
Yeah, that's comedians. Comedians like boxers, not the best dressed though.
I remember during that time, that's when it was all leather down.
Yep.
Everything. Look at Eddie Murphy. Look at Rick James. All them dudes during that period in that time.
So listen, Eddie Murphy comes out. I'm watching. I'm laughing, and you know when you're 8 or 9, you're not focusing on like once you get lost in that hilariousness, you're not focusing on like the creaky stairs and people sneaking up on you. And my father was like, "What are you watching?" And I'm like, "This guy," and he's like, "You can't watch this." So my father kicks me out. I go back upstairs. I'm grounded, right? He's like, "I should hit you." Like 20 minutes later, I go downstairs to get some drink, and guess what? My father's watching it. You can't make that up. You can't make it like that. If it's bad, you shouldn't be setting that example.
Exactly.
Like, but it was funny. But it wasn't funny because when we 80s man, 70s, 80s. Even 90s, like, you knew your place as a kid.
Yep.
You were told, listen, the grown folks coming up. You go downstairs with your little cousins, and you play little games, and don't come upstairs unless
Unless somebody died.
Yeah, that's it.
Pretty much.
Leave us alone.
Yep.
This is our free time.
Yep.
You keep yourselves busy and don't break nothing. So, I think that, like you said, Live on Sunset for Richard Pryor, for me, it was Eddie Murphy raw. It was like, if there's one comedian left that I haven't seen that's alive that I want to go, like if Eddie Murphy comes around and he actually does stand up again, I'll pay whatever I need to pay to go see him.
I think he is.
He said he was, but I don't know if COVID,
Yeah, you're right about that. Eddie Murphy, for me, in all honesty, he was the first person, I've ever seen from I would say close to my generation and everything like that. Somebody I saw on Saturday Night Live.
Oh, Gumby?
Yes. Saturday Night Live. The first time I ever seen Eddie Murphy, but when he came out with Raw, when he first started to blow up, I thought that was the funniest thing around.
Because if you grew up, depending on where you grew up, and I don't even want to say depending on where you grew up, the ice cream thing, there's always a kid that couldn't afford the ice cream, and there's always kids that got to get whatever ice cream they wanted, so they would make fun of the kid that couldn't. You ain't got no ice cream. That shit is still funny to this day. I don't care what anybody says.
There was always that kid who didn't get the ice cream making fun of, always smacked it out your hand.
Yep.
Yep.
There
was that one kid.
And then somebody's fighting because you smacked it out of my hand, and a big brother or big sister come over. And so I think like that is definitely, those two are like legendary, gold standard, platinum standard. Like if you're gonna, talk about comedy, that's got to be that, right?
Exactly.
Who? What's next on your list of?
All right, like I said, I had Live on Sunset Strip, had Eddie Murphy's Raw. This is a toss-up because it's like, all right, I'm just gonna say the Kings of Comedy.
You can't even the Kings of Comedy. People that if you're younger than 30, you don't understand the Kings of Comedy.
And what Kings of Comedy did for me, it was like there was a lot of shows and stuff like that with stand-up comedians and everything like that. But Kings of Comedy made me fall in love again with the whole comedy show, just the stand-up comedy routines and just watching it. Like I used to go to comedy shows and stuff like that. But it was like I seen John Witherspoon, I seen David Allen Gray in person, things of that nature. But Kings of Comedy was okay, now I can get back into this frame of mind of just watching a whole comedy show and everything. And they, all four of them did their thing.
Yeah, Kings of Comedy, people have to understand, all four of them are different too. But to close it with Bernie Mac, rest in peace too, Bernie Mac was funny. And he was a physical comedian because his eye, just everything told you a story, right? I saw Steve Harvey live. He's hilarious. I saw Cedric live. He's hilarious. And I've seen D.L. Hughley live. Hilarious. I never got a chance to see Bernie Mac, and I would love to because he's funny. Like when he said milk and cookies.
Put it this way. If you want to really talk about comedy specials and shows, because every comedian that's on the Kings of Comedy, and I figure where most of them first got their first start at, you can't leave out Def Comedy Jam.
Oh, Def Comedy Jam as a whole is classic because you got the Chris Tuckers, and I'm gonna get to this, Martin Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
You got all the great. I don't even want to say urban comedians, but like really, you got to look at it. All the comedians they wouldn't let in the front door got their shine on BET.
Yep.
And on Def Comedy Jam.
And you know what's funny about Def Comedy? Not really funny. I say like 95% of the comedians they had on that show blew up in some sort of way.
Oh yeah, because it got them to see it, and it was because it was HBO, it wasn't just an audience of it wasn't just a black audience.
Yeah.
White kids like myself got to see comedians that I might not have even heard of unless you were more mainstream. The Chris Rocks. If you were on Saturday Night Live, I might know you. Or if you were on like the late night television shows. Arsenio too, like Arsenio. Hall show. Like people forget about that. The Wayans brothers coming out with In Living Color. There's a lot. There's a large faction. So Eddie Murphy Raw, right? You got Kings of Comedy. I agree. I mean, the Kings of Comedy, you can't even like if you put that foursome up. What are you doing? Who you getting to beat that? Like that's Eddie Murphy, probably Richard Pryor, like the original OGs.
He's like Red Fox, Richard Pryor, and like you said, Eddie Murphy. Who else could really stand up against?
And what do you call Baby's Kids? What's his name?
Robin Harris.
Robin Harris.
Yes.
People forget about Robin Harris. Robin hilarious. It's hilarious. And for a lot of people listening, they might. I know some people out there are going to say, well, what about like Seinfeld? What about, listen, I don't know if you know this, but like I love comedy. So I'm going to bring up some names, but you're going to hear a lot of the names that, like Chris Rock, Bring the Pain. Okay? I've never ever hit a woman, but I'll shake the shit out of her. Right? Like just that, talking about like OJ. Right? Talking about just... I mean, even his new special where he hit with Will Smith.
Yep.
Right?
Or even the special before that, when he talked about his divorce.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And talking about, like, the only thing, women and dogs. Remember one of our first episodes, women and dogs.
Or the only thing that's love unconditionally.
Unconditionally, men.
We got that from Chris Rock.
That's Chris Rock, right? So Chris Rock, like, Chris Rock's Bring the Pain came out, I believe, right before Kings of Comedy, I want to say. Let me see. I'm going to look this up right now. But I think Bring the Pain came out on HBO before Kings of Comedy. So I think Kings of Comedy came around 97, 98. So I remember I went to see it in Myrtle Beach. Ooh. When it came out to the movie theaters. Because that was like the first original like movie theater, because before you had to buy like the DVDs of the specials or you had to get the, the bootlegs. I'm not saying, that's a good thing, but... So Kings of Comedy came out in 2000. Okay. So you're talking Bring the Pain came out 4 years before that. That was my senior year in high school. It came out.
Okay.
And that was an event. That shit was hilarious.
Yep.
And what I like about all comedians that are really good at their craft is that they bring up relevant things that everybody can relate to.
Like one of my comedians that's on my list, he does a magnificent job at doing that. And I know he pisses a lot of people off.
I'll get to it.
My man Dave Chappelle.
Yep. Dave Chappelle is... Listen, Dave Chappelle...
But one of the reasons why I like Dave Chappelle's style, one, he's irrelevant. Two, I knew Dave Chappelle before he even really blew up because one barbershop I worked in, one of the barbers used to cut his hair when he first came to New York from D.C. But Dave Chappelle, the reason why I love Dave Chappelle, because in his comedy, he will have you thinking too. Thinking about relevant issues. And sometimes he does it in a way where he'll insult your intelligence.
Which good comedians know how to weave, right, into those areas, especially in social commentary, where it needs to be, where you need to be called on it.
Yep.
When he was I remember during the pandemic when he came out with, like, he explained that like, my people traveled across the ocean. I remember sitting there just, like, he was like the narrator, just bringing